Welcome, JDs and Littlemen. Today, I want to talk about 28 Years Later. There's a whole lot of thoughts that I have about that movie. Went with the partner to go watch it in theaters. I gotta say, there's a lot to cover. We went to go watch the movie. Had high hopes. I love 28 Days Later. I love 28 Weeks Later. Very good movies for very different reasons. I think 28 Days Later is one of the first good zombie revival found footage style movies where it's like it looks like it's played on a VHS and it looks like good for its time, very showing of that era, how it was, the Jim and all the characters in 28 Days Later are all very 90s early 2000s characters like Y2K, and it shows, and it that movie has a ton of character, and I loved every single second of it. We actually watched 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks, like we rewatched them. I think a couple of days, like a week, in the week before watching 28 Years Later, we watched the two of them because we were like, okay, we have watched 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later before, but in order to kind of catch up on where we are, because we thought it was going to be a continuation of those movies. It's not. 28 Years Later is not a continuation of those movies. It's nothing like the other two. Technically, it's in the same universe, and I'll talk a lot about why they did what they did, like the directors and the producers and everything, but we'll get into that a little bit later. 28 Days Later, amazing movie, 10 out of 10. I would say it's probably in my top 5 zombie things ever, TV show or movie. Like it is a beautiful movie. We have very basic infected. We all know what happens, and if you don't know what happens in that movie, basically some PETA style people go into a monkey experimentation laboratory in Britain, in the UK, in the United Kingdom. That was a lousy UK accent. I swear I could do a better one. They go to the UK, and or they're in the UK, and they go and they're like, "Oi, fucking release these monkeys!" Um, and they do that, and the monkeys are very aggressive because they've been experimented on, and they have a virus inside them that makes them very aggressive. That would be the virus that turns everyone into an infected. I think they call them infected in this. Yeah, they're infected. They're not zombie. They're not undead. They're just infected. Yeah, they go and they open up one of the cages, and one of the scientists comes in and he's like, "Stop, please, or sorry, please stop, ah!" And he's like begging them not to do it, and they're like, "Fuck you," and they fight him, and they open up the cage, and as soon as they open up the cage, the monkey attacks one of them and bites them, and then it becomes like a whole. It becomes terrible. They some of them get bit, some of them die because of this. They're like freaking out and they're like shooting each other because of this monkey. That's basically how the infection starts, and then spreads out to the greater United Kingdom. And Jim is our central protagonist. He was in a coma because he got hit by a truck. A little Jimmy boy wakes up 28 days later. Oh my god, it's the title of the movie. He wakes up 28 days later. He wakes up, no one's there. He's in a hospital. He's in a room, and he wakes up and no one's there. And then he looks around the whole hospital, no one's there. And my girlfriend, while we were watching this, was like, "Do you think The Walking Dead ripped off of that?" And I was like, "Oh, probably right, because it's like almost a one-to-one of he wakes up and he's like, "What's going on?" Goes around the hospital and there's no one there, and he walks around the streets and there's no one there. And that's kind of what happens to old that was a little embarrassing that I forgot his name. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched The Walking Dead in a hot minute. It's been 2 years since I watched Rick. It's a one-to-one of Jim and Rick. I can't believe I forgot what his name was. And then he goes outside, Jim, not Rick. I mean, Rick goes outside, dude, but I'm talking about, okay, Jim. Jim goes outside. He's like exploring, and then he sees a church, goes inside, and some of the infected come in, and then he attacks them, right? And we all know how the movie goes on from there. Basically, the beginning of the infection starts because some monkeys with the infection infected humans. It's kind of like how HIV happened, except there was no monkey fondling. It was being attacked by one. Very different. Still dumb humans. But we still dumb. Either way. Um, so that's the first movie, and it's a good movie. Now the comics are fucking amazing. If you haven't like read the comics of 28 Days Later, I highly suggest just listening to like like a YouTube video essay of like all of that like lore, because it goes really deep dive and it like talks about some things that happen, and it like kind of like pieces together some things and clues you in as to like like what's going on. So that's 28 days later. 28 weeks later is 28 weeks after the infected virus happens. A lot of the UK infected have starved. They've starved to death. They have essentially like, well, we all know what happens when like, you know, you become like a skeleton, and obviously those infected aren't going to like survive because they're not undead. They're just infected people. And then once your processes start shutting down, they start shutting down like regular people. So in this movie, there is two protagonists, technically three, but we're not going to call one of them a protagonist. Basically, it is a dad, a mom, and two children. The two children are the main protagonist of the movie. The dad is kind of like a deuteragonist, meaning like a secondary protagonist, but not really. He's also an antagonist. But in this movie, the the opening intro starts with the kids aren't in the picture yet, by the way. They're like in America, or not the UK. The mom and the dad are in the UK. Basically get attacked in like a barn house where there's a bunch of random strangers, including the mom and the dad. The dad ends up like running away and abandoning the mom, and everyone basically dies, or we think at least, including the mother. But it's a dupe. It's a dupe. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. And he escapes, and it cuts to 28 weeks later, because at the beginning it starts at like on the day of the infected or whatever. And 28 weeks later, and they've set up a base. They've like most of the infected have starved. The two kids, which are the youngest people to come back to the UK after that, they're the first like youngest kids to come back. And people are like, I don't know if there should be kids here. Honestly, I like kids are kind of like kids are kind of dumb, which I like full heartedly agree with. If you think that there's any potential for like for anyone to get infected, kids are going to get infected. Kids are messy. Kids don't wash their hands often, and they're sloppy, and they like go exploring shit that they definitely shouldn't. So like, don't you should not have brought children into you should have waited like a whole year before bringing any children into any infected area, because what happens is what happens in the movie. Obviously, like they're like, oh, like their house is close to the base of operations. So not only did you bring children into a place where they could potentially get infected and then infect everyone there, therefore causing another outbreak, right? Because children are children and they're gross and full of germs and bacteria. Not only did you do that, but the base of operations is close to their old house, right? Now, I don't know about you, but that's disaster waiting to happen in my mind. I don't know if that's just me, but that's very dumb. So that happens. The dad is obviously alive because he ran away, and he's like maintenance. He's maintenance. He's the head of maintenance. Or he's the head of maintenance. So he has an all access card to everywhere. Um, and he's just like, yeah, why don't you guys just like chill in the room and I'll go do my job. And he leaves his kids alone with no supervision because that's what you do in a place full of dead infected. Father of the Year award. I think we should give it to him. I think he should get a Father of the Year award. That's obviously sarcasm. Not at all. He does that, and the kids are like, "Oh man, our house is nearby, past the green zone. The green zone being where you're allowed to go if you're not infected." Also, Jeremy Renner's in this as a sniper, as an American sniper. He's cool as fuck. He always is. He's Jeremy Renner. I don't know if it's because of Hawkeye. I don't know if it's because it's Jeremy Renner, but I love Jeremy Renner. He's just like a chill dude. He's in this as an American sniper with a heart. Wow. Oh my God, Jeremy Renner's a good guy. Wow, what a surprise. They obviously sneak out of the out of the green zone because they're children, and children don't do what you tell them to do. And I hate the dad in this. They sneak out and then they like steal a little Vespa and they use the Vespa to get to their house. Very important part that I haven't mentioned yet is the kid and the mom, one of the kids, the little boy, and the mom have heterochromia. Heterochromia meaning two different color dyes, sometimes caused by trauma, sometimes not. It depends. Like sometimes you're born with it, sometimes it happens at a certain age because of genetic predisposition. Well, you have to have the genetic predisposition. Disposition. We're gonna move on. Anyway, but sometimes it happens because of trauma, like something traumatic happens and then you get it. Sometimes you just have it, right? Anyway, the mom has it and the kid have it. So they go and they get to their house and they're like, we're looking around and something is in the corner. Something shuffles around in the corner and oh my God, the mom's alive. And they're like, and the mom's like a little like aggressive with the kid and they're like, don't leave me. And it's like, of course, if you spent half a year surviving from the infected and also like thinking that, I don't know, thinking whatever you're thinking and your kids just randomly show up to your house, you're gonna like be like, oh my God, my children, right? Yeah, that happens. And then the US Army shows up and they're like, oh my gosh, she's alive. Arrest her. Because that's what you do with someone who's a survivor of something. You arrest them, which I get it. They have to quarantine her and everything. So they do that. They take her and they kind of like strap her down and they get her into like this like quarantine area in the basement of the base of operations, and they take the kids back and nothing happens to the kids, luckily, minus like a little scare. Like obviously that's scary, and they do see a lot of dead bodies, which kids probably shouldn't see. So dad of the year award, like I said. After that, the dad, who obviously has an all access card, which means he can get anywhere in the building because he's a maintenance guy, which is a huge risk. By the way, you shouldn't give your maintenance guy that much access. I don't care how good he is. Yeah, so he goes obviously to the mother and he goes, "I'm so sorry, love. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I just wanted to save our children and blah blah blah." And she starts crying and she's like, "I forgive you and whatever," because um she understands, which is very nice. Like I get it because he had children to go back to, and it's a stressful situation, and obviously like they understand each other and they love each other very much, and that's very nice. And then he kisses her, and unfortunately, due to the heterochromia in her like genetic mutation of this, she's a carrier who doesn't have any of the symptoms. So she was infected, she just was asymptomatic. Whoopsie, you just kissed her. Saliva transfer. He just immediately gets infected, rages out, and there goes the mom. And then he manages to escape, infect a bunch more people, and oh no, now there's a mutated version of the virus that's learned to survive within people without fully. He's like turned, by the way. He's infected, but it's given ample gestation period inside her body where the virus has mutated. And I'm telling you all this, so it leads right into 28 years later. So I had a theory, and I was right about it. But basically, the second outbreak that happened, because it did happen and a lot of people got infected, and it actually spread to France. At the end of the movie, you see it spread to France. That's where they cut it at 28 weeks later. It spread to France, and they're like freaking out and whatever. Cut to 28 years later. They kind of like retconned it a little bit, not really. They explained that it got pushed back from France, so it's back just in the UK. They like eliminated all the infected that were in everywhere but the UK. So it's an isolated in the UK event. They have a bunch of ships kind of like surrounding the UK, patrolling and then trying to eliminate anyone who's coming in or out of the UK, right? They have just like fully quarantined the whole island. 28 years later, we cut to a dad and his son. So his name is Spike. The actor's name is Will. His last name is Williams. His name is Spike. So Spike, the main protagonist of this movie, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, who plays the dad, Jamie, live not on the main UK, but an island off of the UK, and then they live off an island off of that island off the UK. So it is I think very important to Scottish people. I might be wrong. Scottish people, please correct me in the comments. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. So basically it's Spike and his dad Jamie and his mom Isla. Now Isla's going a little crazy in this movie. Spike is like just turning of age. He's like 13, 14-ish. They don't exactly say what age he is. I think yeah, they don't really say his age. But basically, Spike and Jamie go out to where the infected are. And, I was saying in 28 weeks later that the infection gestated inside of the woman and therefore will have more predisposition. I hate that word. I don't know how to say that word. That people will be more predisposed to have very different genetic mutations, which will create different types of infected. Yeah, this happens in this. So we have crawlers, which are like very bloated, slow infected, which are essentially bloaters and Left 4 Dead, where they like crawl on the ground and they like eat worms and stuff off of the ground. So and there's like the regular infected, which are the ones that like run around like that. Also, if you guys see my girlfriend right there, she's just putting stuff away. You can wave your hand. Yeah, there you go. Doesn't she have pretty nails? um, but basically, you have like the regular infected, you have the crawlers, and then you have the alphas. Because they couldn't make a 2025 infected movie without saying the word alpha. If you guys don't know what the alphas are, it's the one with the giant schlongs. Uh, we've all seen the movie. If you haven't, go watch the movie. Why are you watching this video? So Jamie and Spike go out and they're like, "Oh son, we have to go get your first kill." I don't know why I turned like Midwestern. But they go and they get his first elimination. They get his first kill and he's like they go exploring some more because they were like just want to like mess around and like hunt some more crawlers and different types of infected so he can kind of break his hunting virginity, right? Which is like I get it as like someone who has hunted before, as someone who's like that kind of thing. I understand where the dad's coming from, but he's also treating like these infected as not human. Um and like as if they weren't people at some point, which is messed up. Um So I kind of like Spike has a disdain for this, right? He's like grossed out by his dad. They go back. They actually stay the night on the main island. They stay the night on the main island because it gets too late and an alpha kind of like picks up on them, and the alpha can actually control other infected uh because he's an alpha, he's the leader, he's the one to trust. Because he does like a primal roar, and I think he's like second generation infected. So it's not like a human gets infected. I think two infected make an alpha infected, if that makes sense. It's like a second generation bloodline type of thing. We'll get right into that because there's something that happens in the movie that makes me think that the woman. Anyway, so they stay the night and then they almost get overrun by an alpha and a bunch of other infected, but they manage to get out of the house early enough and they manage to get to like the bridge. It's like a stone bridge between the island and the like smaller island because they're on that the whole thing's an island. The whole United Kingdom is an island, but they're off of that island on a smaller island, and then there's an even smaller island where their base is, right? So they go from the smaller island to the base. There's a small stoneway that they can only access during certain parts of the day because it gets flooded at night. Are we all clear here? Does that make sense? Do I have to draw a diagram? I feel like I should draw a diagram about this. 3 islands, the United Kingdom, smaller island, I don't know what it's called, and then the base. No, so we'll go smaller island, base. We'll do that. We got it. So they run to their base. They're like waddling through the water because it's not like all the way down, but they manage to get there before the alpha gets there, which is terrifying, by the way. And then the base ends up like eliminating the alpha because there's an alpha at their doorstep. Obviously, you got to get rid of it. And they manage to make it back. And then they like celebrate all the rest of the night. It's like 3 a.m. probably, or like 2 a.m. I think they say it's 4 a.m. in the movie. But like, they celebrate Spike's first kill. And the dad's like getting drunk. And he has like he's got a second lady. He's got a second lady that he snuggles up with. And Spike sees us. Spike sees them wander, like he sees them go outside and he follows them, and then he sees a little hanky panky. And Spike's not too happy about that because Isla, I don't know if you remember, but Isla is his mom. And Isla and Jamie are together, right? And Jamie's his father. So his father's getting with another woman while Isla's sick. And, that's a no-go. So he's very upset about that. He rushes home, and some old guy. It's not his grandpa, but some old guy's taking care of Isla, and he's like, I'll take it from here, Gramps. Daps him up, and he goes and he's like taking care of his mom, and then his dad shows up in the morning, and he's like, "Get away from me, you mother!" And he's like pulls out a knife, and he's like, "Get away from the two of us." um he does that, and he's like the dad Jamie, he's like upset, and he's like, "Fuck, I'm Aaron Taylor Johnson. I played the Flash. I played Quicksilver. Don't you know? I played Kick Ass." He doesn't say that, but he's like oh, he's upset because his child is upset at him, and his child's right because she calls him out for cheating on his wife, girlfriend, partner. Uh, which was totally right on Spike's behalf. What the fuck, Jamie? He does that, and then and then he like punches the wall like a child and walks out and runs out, and then Spike gets his little like brain thought in his brain because the old Gramps guy was talking about a doctor the other day. He's like, what's that smoke? When they were out there, he was like, what's that smoke? And he's like, oh, it's just smoke from the old village doctor that left because he's crazy anyway. Turns out he's a liar. So they leave. He's like, Mom, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you help. Come on, let's go. Come on, vámonos. Do Dora. So they leave, and he takes his mom. He takes some gear, and they like go, and it takes them like two to 3 nights to get there. There's a whole trek along the way. Okay, they start and they go from there to some old ruins, and they stay the night at the old ruins. By the way, um, Isla is experiencing something that's somewhat close to dementia. So sometimes she thinks that that Spike is her dad. Sometimes she's like fully like there. Sometimes she's like, "Oh, this is my child," and like I'm not doing well. And sometimes she's like fully like out of it, and she thinks that Spike is her dad, because they have the same kind smile, eyes, smile. I think it's smile. Sorry about all the coughing. I need to drink more water. Anyway, so on the first night, they stay at a couple ruins. One of the crawlers almost gets Spike, but through the power of being a mother, Isla manages to eliminate him. The crawler, not Spike. That'd be messed up. Manages to eliminate him, and then decides to sleep next to him the rest of the night. And Spike wakes up and is confused because there's a dead crawler there with like a stone next to him. His head's been bashed in, and he's like, What happened?" And the mom obviously is not always there, so she's like, I have no idea. What like she genuinely doesn't know this. This is no bitch. She just doesn't know. So she must have forgotten overnight. Um, and over the course of the second day, they they see a gas station and they step into the gas station, and then they almost immediately faint because there's a bunch of gases in the air, and it gets makes them faint. And then there's a guy named Eric. He is a Swedish man, and he goes and he's like, "Get on the ground!" And they're like, "Oh!" And they jump onto the ground, and Eric blows up the whole gases, but they're fine because they're below the gases, which is not how gases work. By the way, that whole gas station would have blown up. Also, little fact that I don't know if people know this, but did you all know that gas goes bad 6 months to a year after like just sitting there? So all those like movies and TV shows where like the world goes to goes to crap, and they like 2 years after like the world's gone like haywire, they go and they fill up their tank with gas. That's not realistic. That doesn't happen. The gas would have gone bad. Anyway, he saves them, and then he's like, "What are you doing here? I'm Swedish. My name is Eric. Look at my hot girlfriend. I'm so vain." And they're like, yeah, Spike's one of Spike's lines gets me, where he's like, why does it look like she got bit? No, she got stung by a bee on the lips because she has lip filler, and I thought that was hilarious. That's so true. But yeah, he's like, what are you guys like indigenous? He calls them indigenous, which is like insane. But true, I guess, because of the whole like UK like quarantine and whatever. It's just like whole new like it's only been 28 years, by the way. It's been 30 years, like less than 30 years. But there's a whole like new culture, and there's a whole new like way of addressing the people who live on the island, and it's so bizarre to me. Anyway, Eric was with the whole team. They all died because of an alpha and infected. So Eric's alone, and then he finds them, And then they are basically like all together, and he realizes that the mom is like losing her sanity, but he still decides to help them anyway, which is nice of Eric, even though he's not the greatest person. So he goes, and they're like going together, and then they go to a train because they hear like someone screaming, and they go inside the train, and there's an infected woman who's giving birth. She's like decided to like haul away in this train. Now, she's not attacking any of them. In fact, Isla goes and gives her hands, and they hold each other's hands like like a mother needing help giving birth. And she gives birth to a human baby. A human baby, by the way. So this got me thinking that I think 2 infected equals an alpha zombie, an alpha infected, sorry. But I think that this woman wasn't infected when she was pregnant, and then was infected after she was pregnant. But they also talk about, I don't know, it's very bizarre. I need to know, what do all of you think? What's with this baby and what's with the alphas? Because I personally think that she was not infected and pregnant, and then she got infected, and because of the whole, they talk about like the placenta and how it like feeds life. But I think that if a zombie infected, like if 2 zombie infected coupled up, I think that it'd be a very different story than like if someone was pregnant and then got infected. But you can tell me in the comments below. Honestly, I want some opinions, because I think I'm very like uh questioning it. Um, they help her give birth, and then they take the baby, and then Eric kills the mother, because then after she gives birth, she's like back to being infected, and then she's like, bah, 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 he's like, bah, 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 bah. And then Eric starts like freaking out and backing away from the 2 of them, being like, "We have to kill that baby." And they're like, "No, he's a human baby. What are you talking about?" And then he's like backing up, and then there's a hole in the ceiling, and and he gets grabbed by Samson. Samson's the big boy alpha. We're pretty sure that's his baby. He's got the schlong. He's got the big schlong. Relatable. Anyway, we're pretty sure that Samson's the baby daddy. And they go and they finally find Dr. Ian Kelson, which is played by Ralph Fiennes. Fiennes? I don't know. He's a really good actor. Ralph, my man. I know him on a first name basis, obviously. I don't. So he goes, and he's like actually a totally chill dude. He stops Samson from getting them because he has sleeping darts that work on the infected, so it puts them to sleep for like 4 hours. So he's like, we gotta go before Samson wakes back up. And they go back to his hideaway, and he's the doctor, so they get there and it's like nighttime, and then um he does take Eric's head, and there's a whole memento mori ritual, which I think the whole memento mori, memento moris, and memento mimir is a chef's kiss, because there's always so much action in zombie movies, and I feel like adding a sense of romanticism in the small things really matters. So I think adding a very like Roman, very like beautiful romantic thing in there uh really changed the movie for me. But I'll do the review at the end. So if you all don't know, Memento Mori, remember to die. Memento Moris, remember to love. And Memento Mimir, remember to live. Those are all beautiful things. I'm sure some of you remember Memento Mori from Unus Annus. Great series. Um, so I've heard. I actually never watched it. Sad. And I actually refused to watch it because the whole point of Unus Annus was that you had to be there for it to be there for it. And if you weren't, then you aren't. I'm not going to go rewatch it from a re-upload because that would ruin the whole point of what Markiplier wanted. And who's the other guy? Anyway, you can tell me down below. Yeah, those are all beautiful sayings, and I do think that you all should take them to heart. Remember that we all die. Remember to love and remember to live. That was a great part of it. But he has a very he's a conversation with Spike, and then he goes and does some basic assessments. I say basic, but I'm not a doctor. He does some assessments on Isla, and turns out Isla has cancer. Very progressive stage 4 cancer, unfortunately. And Isla said that she suspected as much, but she was too afraid to tell Spike because she didn't want to leave him alone and she didn't want him to be scared, which was a very beautiful, sad moment in the movie. And you really felt it when you were there. Like if you watched it in the theaters, it was a very touching moment. And she chooses to go out in a way where, because she's getting there. It's like really bad cancer. So Dr. Ian decides to give her a bunch of morphine, and she goes out that way. And then he does have a giant thing of skulls to commemorate the dead, because even though they're infected, they're still people, right? So he does that, and he's like, choose a good spot for her, because he cremates the skulls, and once they're not cremates, but he burns all of the excess stuff off, so there's just a skull left. So he's like, choose a good spot for her, and he chooses the very top of the monument, and that's the end of Isla. Memento mori. Remember that we all must die. So Spike, obviously in grief and sad and not knowing what to do with the new baby, is lost for a second, and then Samson shows up. Yeah, that's right. They have to hide because Samson shows up, and they like hide under. There's like a hidden thing, and he hides underneath. By the way, Dr. Ian, this entire time, is like fully red because he has iodine. Apparently, the infected hate the smell of iodine, and they can't smell you or aren't attracted to you when you are wearing iodine. So he's just covered in iodine. So no other infected has touched him. But Samson shows up and he finds them underneath the ground because he can, like, I don't know, sense them or something. And he grabs Dr. Ian Kelson, and Spike's like panicking, and he's like, and then he grabs one of the darts and gets Samson with it. And he's like, we gotta go before Samson shows up, before Samson wakes up. So they leave. They go their own separate paths, right? And what Spike decides to do next is very bold and very like. So he decides to take the baby back to the base. Now remember, Smaller Island is the island they're currently on with Dr. Ian Kelson. It's where all of the infected are. It's where all the stuff goes down. He decides to go back to base, and he leaves at just the right moment so that he leaves the baby, and he leaves a note to his dad, Jamie, and to the rest of the base. So they like finally hear the baby crying, and they go and they're like, oh my god, there's a baby, and there's Oh, you left. Spike left a note. Sorry, 1 second. And in the note, Spike basically says, "I'm not ready to come back home. Don't come looking for me. I'm ready to set out on my own, and I want to make my own path." Um, and he's like mad at his dad. But he's like, this baby was born from an infected woman, but it is a human baby. And he talks about his mom and how she died of cancer and all of that, or didn't die of cancer, but she died, which is very touching. It's a very nice commemorative. Like it's a very nice ending to the movie, or almost ending, right? Um, After seeing that, Jamie tries to run after his son, but his son is smart and planned it so the tides would come back up by the time that they found the baby and the note. And they did, so he actually wasn't able to go after his son. um, and then it cuts to Spike just kind of out in the wilderness, and he's like out exploring the island, and he's trying to cook some fish, because he hunted some fish, and some infected show up, and he's able to take like one or two of them up out. Um, Also, I didn't cover this because I kind of wanted to wrap it all up in a nutshell. But at the beginning of the movie, at the very beginning of the movie, they show a kid, like right when the infected happened. They show a kid who's son of a pastor, and the son, uh, his name's Jimmy. Now, if you guys know where I'm going with this, then you know where I'm going with this. If not, then no. Also, there is a reference to Jim in this, but it's not Jim. There's an infected that looks a lot like Jim, um, but it's not. It's been confirmed that it's not Jim. They might use him for a later movie actually, because I think they're doing another trilogy. Also, to those who are wondering why there's no 28 months later, it's because this was supposed to be 28 months later, but then they were in production hell for a very long time. So they did a cheeky tongue in cheek and made this 28 years later because of how long they were in production hell and how long it took to make the movie. Obviously, it wasn't 28 years, but it's kind of just like a little reference to that. That's why it's not called 28 months later. And they had to like completely change the plot line and everything. But at the beginning of the movie, there's this kid named Jimmy, and he like his whole family and all like whatever get attacked, and he goes down to his papa who's a pastor, and his papa's like, it's the rapture, Jimmy Kun. It doesn't say that. He's like, it's the raptor, Jimmy. the, the rapture, not the raptor. It's a goddamn Tyrannosaurus. He's like, it's the rapture, Jimmy. Accept it. We will be saved. And Jimmy's like, no. And he gives him a cross, and he takes it, and it's like upside down. So he's like, oh. And so he takes the cross, and then he like runs away. Cut back to the present moment. Spike's about to be overrun by infected, and then this guy shows up. I forgot what his name is. I can find you the name right now, boys and girls and days and dams. He's a very beautiful, amazing actor. Jack O'Connell. Jack O'Connell. Jack O'Connell. And though I couldn't remember his name, but I do remember that he played an amazing part in Sinners. I love him in Sinners. Anyway, Jack O'Connell plays Jimmy. And Jimmy shows up, and he's got the Jimmy Savile fit on. Now, if you guys don't know who Jimmy Savile fit, he's a guy from like the 80s and 90s, who did children's television, who got canceled for doing some not so great things to people, right? But in this universe, obviously, he didn't get canceled because the infection happened. Comprendo? So he's got a Jimmy Savile fit on. If you can't picture the Jimmy Savile fit, if you haven't watched this movie, by the way, don't. Why are you spoiling yourself? Just go watch the movie. Oliver Tree has a lot of like Jimmy Savile inspired fits. We're talking like the old like pink and blue and it's like sweatpants and the whole suit get up. Flash a picture of Jimmy Savile. But yeah, and Oliver Tree over here somewhere. So that's Jimmy Savile. So there's a whole like group of like blonde Power Ranger esque, and I say Power Ranger esque because of the sequence that happens where they're like fighting the infected as if they were the Power Rangers, where they're like using like nunchucks and different like fighting equipment while there's music blaring in the background, and Jimmy Crystal is just like, "Hey, you mind if we tag in, Matt?" Yeah, no, he does that. It's definitely a reference to Power Rangers. And he does that, and it's a great time. And that's the end of the movie. That's the end of the movie. That's where it ends. It ends on a Power Rangers note. And I know they're making more of them, but why would you do that? Okay, this goes into the review of things because I need to get started on this. Also, my hair looks terrible right now. I need to take a shower. It's got that. It's got that. That. Okay. So, this was not a 28 Days Later movie. I've watched 28 Days Later. I've watched 28 Weeks Later. And I watched them just before watching 28 Years Later. Don't get me wrong. This movie was great for a zombie movie. My girlfriend agrees. It was a great zombie movie. This was not a 28 Days Later franchise movie. This was not connected in the slightest. The way you could say it was connected was they were infected, right? They were infected and they were in the UK. I hope to God that the rest of the movies that come out have some sort of connection to the original two movies, because right now it feels like it's an entirely separate franchise, which you don't want to do. I get the reference to like Jim or whatever, but can we bring back some characters from one of the original two movies? Please. Because as it stands right now, I loved the movie. It had a lot of touching moments. Don't get me wrong. It had a lot of great touching moments. Like I said, Memento Mori, Memento Moris, Memento Mimir, and all of like the stuff with the cancer and all of like the Spike's journey into becoming like a man in his eyes. But it was not connected to 28 Days Later at all. I kind of felt slighted, and I kind of felt like they should have just made an entirely new franchise and called it something else entirely. Because if I had watched this movie without the 28 Days Later franchise slapped onto it, I would have loved it a lot more than I did, because I didn't love it as much as I should have, just because it was like a 28 Days Later franchise, like 28 years later. It was just not it. Like I want Jim. I want someone. I don't care who. I want someone from one of those movies, or more references to those movies. Cuz having one reference to Jim and calling it good and like not really like doing much else with it, or not really showing the UK, like I get it. And there were a lot of good moments, and there was a lot of like nods to like there's a tree that was a beautiful tree that they showed a lot in that movie that was cut down, and it was like a part of that part of the nation, and that was beautiful. And they like CGI'd it in, but it looks like very beautiful and everything. But it's not a 28 Days Later movie. It really isn't. Also, they made some stylistic choices that were not great. At the beginning, they did some like freeze frames where they cut like to like 3 or 4 separate shots when they were like shooting an infected, which wasn't my favorite. Um, it just didn't feel like a 28 Days Later movie. I swear to God, like you could convince me that it was like its own series. Other than that, I love the movie. Good job with it. Good job with all of the things you did. But please, for the love of God, add some references to the other two movies and bring in some characters that we all know and love. Because if you don't, no one's gonna like the franchise. No one's gonna think it's a 28 Days Later franchise. Bring it back to the UK. Show us the base of operations, what it looks like now. Show us parts of the UK that they all went through at some point. Like, if you did anything like that, fantastic. We would all love that. That's it for me, JD's and Gentlemen. Thank you all for watching. If you're still here at the end of the video, I gotta say, dedication, amazing. Thank you for watching this entire video. It's been an hour long, and I appreciate you so much. And if you want to see more videos like this, if you want to see more long form content, feel free to like and subscribe. And please, all of the things I said, feel free to comment about. And if you don't want to comment, you don't have to comment. I'll see you all later. Have a good one.